Hello bellezas, welcome back to my channel, or if you are new here then just welcome. Hi, my name is Brenda. I do paranormal videos here on my channel, so if that is something that you are interested in, please consider subscribing down below and turn on your post notifications so you do not miss when I post another video like this one. Now with all of that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into today's video. Hello everybody, and happy Friday, and also happy fall. I can't believe it's already October and we are in spooky season. Like, what? It all happened so fast. I thought I had way more time to prepare. I haven't even put together my Halloween costume. Like, you know, it happened so fast. Time just literally flies by. But anyway, I hope that you guys are excited for today's video. I am excited to read the stories that I found here today, and kind of going into the reason why I ended up wanting to read these stories is because I had looked into an urban legend folktale of some sort that takes place in California, and that is about the Dark Watchers. And there are a lot of different videos that have covered this urban legend before, and it's pretty much the same in every single article that I have clicked on. It's basically the same exact story, the same encounters, the same sightings, and so on and so forth. And there's not really much information on these entities, but they are basically set in California, like Big Sur area. I think that's how you pronounce it, and like along the mountainsides. And there have been witnesses for like hundreds or maybe thousands of years ago, starting off supposedly with one of the Native American tribes, the Chumash people, I believe it's what they were called. But there's no actual recordings of this Native American tribe ever talking about the Dark Watchers. It mostly started around the 1700s with the Spanish colonizers who ended up coming here to America and settling here. They first started seeing these apparitions along the coast areas of California, and they were basically just these shadow figures who were wearing long dark cloaks, and they usually appeared to look between 7 to 10 feet tall, so they were very much taller than any human being. So they definitely were sure that this was not just a human apparition. This had to be some kind of paranormal entity. So when they started spotting them, they were more documented at that time because they even gave them a name. They called them Los Vigilantes Oscuros, which is just literally translates to the Dark Watchers in Spanish, and that's how this urban legend came about. So basically these apparitions appear to hikers or people just out in these areas, like travelers and so on and so forth. And surprisingly, there's just very few written accounts of people coming across these entities, just a lot of word of mouth stories, people telling each other about these things happening. And supposedly these apparitions also are mostly appearing to people who are out in the wild without any modern equipment or any kind of weapon of any sort. They'll literally just appear for a brief second. Sometimes they're seen to be wearing wide brim hats. There's no facial features that can be seen with these entities either. It's just pitch black figures that you see from a distance, and the closer that you end up getting to these figures, the quicker that they disappear, because it seems like they want to keep their distance. And there also hasn't been an established fact about whether they are good or bad. They kind of just really seem to be looking out for people in the area, so it's nothing malicious from what people have encountered with them that they have said. You know, it's sometimes they say that they feel kind of a safe, peaceful feeling come over them whenever they do encounter these beings. And some people have said that they have had scary experiences with them, like having followed these entities and then ending up going astray from the path that they were originally on. And some people have said that they have followed them only to end up at the exact same place that they had started when they first saw the entity, without really feeling like they went in a circle at all. It felt like they had been going through all these different trails and paths and then just ultimately ending up at the same exact spot, which would really freak me out, and it would be a very, very scary experience for sure. So that is basically the gist of these entities. There's not very much known, and then the same 3 stories kind of circulate about some poets or some authors that had allegedly seen these entities and have wrote stories about it and their encounters like in a book. And that's basically, I think it was John Steinbeck who wrote a story about their encounter with the Dark Watchers. And I think there was also another author, Brent Swanser, who compiled a bunch of different stories of people's most recent encounters with these beings. I'm gonna be calling these things so many different things because I don't really understand what they are, and there's not enough information about them to really know what kind of entity they are. So they're an entity, a being, a spirit, apparition, and some people have even thought that they are extraterrestrials from another planet who are observing us and have been observing us since the first colonizers in the Americas. But I'm not really sure if that's actually plausible or not, because there has been less and less sightings of them in modern time. I think we're more tied to our devices. Like we always have some kind of technology on us, and maybe that kind of deters them away from us, and they don't want to appear to us as often because we might take a picture of them, we might take a video of them. If they are aliens of some sort, then they wouldn't want that. And I am going to be reading you some of the theories on this article about what they could possibly be, since I am talking about the different things that they could possibly be. So there are a wide array of explanations for the Dark Watchers that range from scientific to fantastical. And the first theory that I'm going to let you guys know about here is that the Watchers are simply hallucinations due to exhaustion and isolation. On one hand, this absolutely makes sense. Mountain hiking is a taxing task, and many people set out for their hikes unprepared and end up exhausted, dehydrated, and delirious. It is not unusual to have auditory and visual hallucinations while in such a vulnerable and compromised state. And while this theory does make sense, like, I want to know at what point they end up seeing the Watchers. Like, do they see them right when they start their hike? Do they see it at the end of it, in the middle of it? Like, what is happening while this experience is happening? Because that could factor into whether this theory is correct or not. Because if these people are wide-eyed and alert and they just started their hike and then they end up seeing these shadow figures, it may just actually be something supernatural and not just something that their mind is conjuring up. It takes a lot for you to end up at that point, but I mean, California is a hot place, so it's easier to get dehydrated and all of that, so who knows. And then the second theory centers around infrasound. Infrasound is low frequency sound that is below what humans can register as audible. However, the body still physically registers infrasound physically. The organs of the inner ear still register the sensation of sound. People who experience infrasound, I don't like saying that word, it's hard for me to pronounce, often report feeling dread, vertigo, dizziness, or the feeling of being watched. This explains some of the encounters, but not the direct sightings of the Dark Watchers. Yeah, because that's another thing that people have said when they go out to these hikes that surround the Big Sur area in California, is that they feel like somebody's watching them, or they feel like something is lurking around them. And they sometimes see the figure, sometimes they don't, sometimes they just have that feeling. So if the infrasound is a reason for them feeling that way, that would make sense, but not for the people who actually saw them, as it says here. And then the third theory is the Brocken specter. Spectre? A Brocken specter is a phenomenon that occurs when the sun is behind a person and their shadow is projected onto fog or clouds in front of them. The effect is an enormous shadowy figure standing before the person. This to me is a far more likely explanation, though it is possible that people are seeing Brocken specters while experiencing infrasound. And I feel like, this would make sense, or this does make sense in a way, but it feels like there's a lot of different elements that have to be put together for this phenomena to occur. And but I mean, it might just be the reason that people see these things. Who knows? And then the last theory is basically the supernatural one. Is it so far-fetched that these beings are actually spirits? The United States of America is a country founded on bloodshed and stands on land taken by force. Is it so outlandish to consider that perhaps some of the spirits of those who were wronged during the process stuck around and are carefully watching the trespassers and colonizers to this day? I certainly think it's possible, or maybe it's a combination of all of these factors coming together to conjure those eerie sights. And that was another thing that I forgot to mention, was that people think that this is a group of people from an indigenous tribe that is no longer in the real world, and this is their spirits that remain and watch over the land that their tribe used to be in. That is another one of the speculations of what these entities could possibly be. But yeah, that is basically it on the Dark Watchers. Very creepy. There's a lot of creepy imagery and things that were put together by people who say that this is what they saw or what they look like, and a lot of them have said that it just looks like they have holes for eyes where the light pierced through them, and it looks like their eyes are glowing, which is a very eerie sight to see in the middle of the night, because they usually do appear between sunset and dusk, so in the middle of the night or like right in the afternoon when the sun is setting, and then you see the light of the day just go through the entity, and then it looks like their eyes are shining or like they're glowing. So very creepy. And I am going to read to you guys 3 stories that were based in California about shadow people or experiences with shadows that I thought would tie into the Dark Watchers, and maybe they are possibly sightings of Dark Watchers, except for some of these they don't take place outdoors, so who knows. There's a lot of shadow people stories out there. I feel like they may or may not be tied to this urban legend, but either way it's just fun to read about them and learn about people's experiences. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. And again, I'm reading from yourghoststories.com, and I'll be letting you know who the author is and when they wrote this. And obviously all 3 of these stories are set in California, as I said, just because it ties to the urban legend that I am discussing here today. And also because the urban legend is so short, I didn't want this to be like a 10 minute video, so that's why I included some other encounters that real people have had and have submitted to this website. So let's start off with the first one that is submitted by Jane Bunny, and this was entered in on September 26, 2019, so it's been a few years now. And again, this is in California, and it's titled Shadow People. When I was very young, my family moved into a 2-story brown house that I was very excited about. It had 3 rooms, all upstairs, and a second living room, but we used that as a different room. When you walk upstairs, you would see the bathroom first. Then you walk down the hall. The first door to your left would be my brother's room. The next room was on the left, and it was my older sister's. And on the right was the master bedroom that my mom and I shared. Every day I would dread the night. I hated bedtime because for me, it meant seeing certain shadows watching me, not letting me sleep. When you walk into the master bedroom, to the right, there's the bathroom area with 2 sinks. In front of the sinks there was the bathroom door. The bed was in the center against the main wall, and then a window to the right looking out to the backyard with a closet to the far right of the room. I remember the same shadow person would hide in the bathroom and leave the door cracked open so it can watch me. It always had a bag, and it would always reach in and throw these beautiful glowing figures like a lollipop, stuff kids would be attracted to. One I liked the most was a carousel that would actually move around like the real thing. They would float all the way to me, and once they passed over my head, I would watch them hit my headboard and break off, kind of like when a firework is done. The little light specks come running down. I would catch myself trying to reach for them, but I stopped myself because I was afraid of what would happen if I took off the blanket I would hide behind. That is so creepy. Oh my gosh. Like this thing trying to lure her, and it's like in her house, just a shadow being of some sort. Obviously, less likely to be one of the dark watchers, but it is watching her. It is watching her sleep, and it's trying to get her to follow it maybe, or to come out into the bathroom. Yikes, I don't like that at all. Okay, that was a good one. It's pretty eerie, and it was short. So let's move on to the second one. This one is by the user owl_cat, and this was submitted on August 26, 2015, a long time ago. It's called Laughing Shadow Men. I have a few detailed experiences of hauntings in different homes I've lived in, but I'll start off with some of the first. When I was between the ages of 1 to 4, my mother, father, brother, who was 3 years older than me, and I had lived in a duplex home with 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. Our neighborhood wasn't expected to be quiet and safe, as we lived in a bit of a troubled town. But this meant that drug dealers, gangbangers, and simply unstable people were not too far from where we lived. Keeping that in mind, as it will explain in the hauntings, I will begin with explaining minor experiences I can recall. Despite being so young, I can vividly remember some of my experiences, like seeing shadows out of the corner of my eye, feeling a gust of wind rush me down the hall or while I'm sitting down, and staring at nothing but being drawn by something. Though the experiences may not have seemed too scary from my perspective, my mom, dad, and brother's experiences were apparently enough to convince them that there were others there with us, and they even had our local priest come and bless the house at least 3 times. They did not explain it to me until I was old enough to understand, but apparently after doing research on our side of the duplex, they came to find that people had in fact died in our house. The deaths of some of them are a little unclear. However, one of them was involved in a drug dealing and was shot and killed in our home. It's hard to explain, but my parents believed that being vulnerable to the energy made them vulnerable to other visitors. One night, as my brother slept in my bottom bunk while I sat in the living room watching TV while my mother washed dishes, he woke up with a feeling of dread as he heard faint, obscured laughter that seemed far, yet right next to his ears. He remembers seeing 6 slightly transparent shadow men with 2 clear holes in their faces where their eyes were likely to have been. My brother remembers this very clearly and vividly, and it still scares him to this day. He remembers them laughing and staring at him, and he was unable to move or make a sound. At first, he thought he might have been dreaming, but with everything so clear and with what came next, he knew there was no way. One of them touched him, grabbed his right arm/wrist to be specific, and as it lifted his arm, my brother can only remember finally having the energy to run out of the room before running into the living room in front of my mom and breaking down into tears without a word. My mom, to my surprise, remembers him crying and being too afraid to explain why. When my brother recalls this story, he can't understand why they might have touched his arm, or why it seemed like he was the only one to have an experience like this in the house. He had encountered the shadow men about once more a little later in his life, but that's a story for another time. And then there's a note. These experiences have left my brother vulnerable to paranormal activity, and although I've been luckier than he has, I often feel energies that no one else can detect right away, and it often leaves me feeling sick and overwhelmed. That's so scary. But I guess there might have been some reason the brother had an inkling for this kind of stuff, and that's why they approached him specifically. Maybe this was like an opening to that, like the start of his ability to see the paranormal or be vulnerable to it of some sort. But that is the most terrifying thing that you could possibly wake up to. Just 6 shadows looming over you, laughing eerily and you're just like, what do I do? I'm just frozen in fear, obviously. Very spooky story for sure. And another encounter with shadow people that is unexplainable. All right, and now story number 3, submitted by Dirt Creature, and this was submitted on February 16, 2016. And this is the Shadow Man of San Diego. This is going to be composed of 4 separate events within the same time span. I have lived in 4 states now, military family. Florida is my last stop. However, I lived in California from the ages of 3 to 9, going on to 10. Even though we didn't live in the best apartment, there was a lot of history in San Diego. Whaley House and William Heath Davis House as examples. Because of this, I suppose I am not entirely surprised about the possible ghosts there. When I was around 7 years old, so around 2005, I started to have experiences with spirits. This is when I started to realize how sensitive I was. The first experience began when I was in my bedroom. I was not asleep, I was not drowsy, I was just laying in bed keeping to my thoughts. I had a closet with sliding doors and it used to get stuck, so I just left it open most of the time. When I looked up, I saw a pair of red eyes staring back at me. I thought to myself, maybe I'm just hallucinating, so I blinked and kept staring at it, and then realized that they wouldn't go away. I started to panic and pretend to go to sleep. Now, as a young girl, I had some Barbie dolls, but I never had toys with red light-up eyes, so I can't blame it on that. Another experience happened shortly after this. In my bedroom, we had it where the bathroom is connected to the bedroom, so I could put the line on. I left my door open, and again, I was not drowsy or half awake. I was wide awake laying in bed. I look up and see out my door a shadow with long pointed ears or horns, pointed feet, and pointed arms. It had no fingers or toes. It was so strange, and it had a malicious smile. It was going into my mom's room. It noticed me and turned to me and shushed me without making an actual sound. I didn't scream. I was frozen. Its eyes were holes. I can't explain it, like it was just a shadow. I still can't wrap my head around it. The next morning, I woke up and said to my mom, "Did anything happen to you last night? Like any nightmares or anything weird or scary?" And she basically responded, "No, I slept fine. Why do you ask?" This is even stranger. Why was this thing going into my mom's room? I couldn't figure it out. The third experience, I started sleeping in my mom's bed shortly after all this. On this particular night, she kept her door open. Now, I have noticed that all of these experiences have taken place just as I get into bed. It's like it wants me to know of its presence or something. I saw a black mass that resembled a man. It just stood there. I kept staring back at it. Suddenly, it took a step forward, and then another step forward. I was so freaked out at that point that I decided to get up and pretend I was sleepy so it wouldn't suspect anything. I pretended not to notice it and closed the door quickly and jumped into bed, curling up next to Mom. Now, this experience happened when I just woke up. This experience is different from the rest. It was around 5 a.m. I had just gotten up. A little backstory. My older brother is 11 years my senior. So around this time, my brother was finishing up high school. I went into the living room and saw a shadow figure similar to my brother's stature. It looked like a man and had empty eyes. I asked, "Joey, is that you?" I wiped my eyes and looked at it again. When I went back to my mom's bedroom, I had passed my bedroom, the one I shared with my brother, and saw him laying in bed. The figure had disappeared. To this day, I still see and hear things. However, I mostly hear things. Because of this, I doubt myself. I have tried to rationalize it. Maybe I have psychosis and hallucinate and I just don't realize it. Maybe it's in my head. California had a lot of ghosts. The apartment in New Jersey was built in the early 1900s, and other people in that complex, plus the landlord, had experiences. And now in Florida, I still sometimes see or hear things. I don't know what to make of it. Is something following me? Has a male dark ghost attached to me? Am I just picking up on ghosts from 2 old apartments and now this moderately old one as well? I don't know. That is so freaking creepy. So many creepy little moments with this shadow being just kind of looming around her area. That is terrifying, especially the shushing. That thing, that entity basically was like, I'm gonna go in there, and then nothing happened apparently, unless the mom doesn't remember, or maybe she didn't want to scare her and pretended like nothing happened, but maybe something did. But I mean, you can't really play it that cool, especially not with somebody or like a kid who's a little bit older, to kind of see through it and be like, you're not telling me something, you know? I don't know, but that is so creepy. And it could be something following her, but it's just like, you just never know, especially because as time goes on, if it doesn't happen as often, it does kind of make you feel a little bit crazy. Like maybe this is just a passing spirit, some kind of passing energy or entity, but it seems a little bit sinister, even though it's not doing anything specifically to harm them. It does feel like they have this urge to like scare her or make her think that it's something else that she's seeing. But yeah, super scary. I was gonna say something else. I was going to say that I feel like obviously when you're younger, you are more susceptible to being able to see these spirits or entities, whatever you want to call them. And then as you grow older and you start to rationalize things, I feel like that kind of goes away more, just because of your own subconscious telling you that it was something that you imagined in order to protect yourself from the fear of it, or like making yourself worried about something like this if it possibly could have been nothing. So I feel like we compartmentalize those abilities once we grow up, and we don't want to come off as somebody who is crazy or like has a wild imagination. And also, people will always try to psychoanalyze you. Is that the right word? I don't know. Like they want to act like they're a therapist or a psychologist and tell you the reasons behind seeing these things. They're like, oh, your frontal lobe, whatever, hasn't developed, and they have all these theories. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't know you were a doctor. I didn't know that you had my medical chart in front of you right now. And that is one thing that I hate. That, I mean, it does make you think that maybe you were just hallucinating or imagining things, but it's very scary to think that you had a moment of psychosis that once in a while comes up and then goes away, and that would make somebody kind of doubt themselves and be like, maybe I should go to the doctor. And the author here says that they hadn't had experiences where they're seeing things anymore. It seems like it's more of an auditory thing, which sometimes you really can't trust your ears, because any sound that is made by a building or something like that, or an animal outside, could be interpreted as something else. Because I remember there was like a squeak somewhere in the building that I work at that sounded like somebody went, huh, and it scared the bejesus out of me. And then it happened again, like the same squeak, and I was like, oh, it doesn't really sound like a huh, it just sounds like a squeak. But I think because I was already on edge because I was by myself, I kind of imagined that that's what it sounded like, and it freaked me out. I even stopped in my tracks because I was walking from one side of the building to the other, and I had one headphone in listening to Stephanie Sue, and I was like walking around, and then I heard it behind me, and I just full on stopped in my tracks, and I was like, what the hell was that? I was so freaking petrified, and I had to stand there for a second and hear it out again. And then ultimately it ended up happening again, and I, like, with me actually listening to it, I took out my earbud and I was attentively listening to it because I was also really scared. And I was like, oh, okay, I think it was just a squeak from something in the building, a pipe, I don't know. So also can't really trust auditory senses, because your surroundings can always impact that differently depending on what kind of mental state you're in too. If you're already scared about something, if you're already anxious about something or worried, that could also kind of alter how you hear or see things, right? But anyway, this story was still very fun, and I never want to discredit people for their experiences or say, oh, maybe you need to rationalize these things and find excuses for it, because if you think you saw what you saw, it could have just been that. It's not always like an excuse you have to find for it, unless you're really trying to get yourself down from that and like not scare yourself. But anyway, that's the last story. I really love shadow people stories. For some reason, they really intrigue me and they really scare me, because you can't make out what they are. Like, they're just these shadows. You don't know if they're looking at you. You don't know, like, you can't make out any of their features. So you don't know if it's somebody who is trying to do something sinister, or if it's just a passing entity, because it's not like you're over here seeing them smile at you friendly or give you like a little wave or anything, you know. It's just this thing. Very creepy stuff. I loved covering this little segment and learning about these things. It was just very spooky, eerie vibes, perfect for this month, and I hope that you guys enjoyed it as well, and that I wasn't just rambling and babbling and yapping and then having you click off by 10 minutes into the video. I hope that you stayed all the way to the end. But if you did, and that way I know who my real ones are, who my besties are, make sure to leave the little shadow man emoji down in the comments. That way I know who stayed all the way to the end. Did I already say that? I might have repeated myself. I don't know. But also, before we do end the video, today's comment shout out goes to this person right here. Thank you so much for leaving a nice comment. As always, I really do appreciate it, and it truly makes my day. And if you want to be the next comment shout out, all you have to do is leave me a nice comment down below, and that's it. Yeah guys, I will see you in the next video. Again, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to stay safe and be kind. Bye bye.